Hello. Today we are going to look at advocacy. Okay, so this is a topic that is covered in mental health, and it was also covered in management. All right, so I'll begin by having this introduction that so many people lack someone to talk on their behalf and air their views out. This calls for people to find such help in several ways. Definition of terms. Advocacy. So advocacy simply means speaking up for or acting on behalf of yourself or another person. That's what advocacy means. In other words, advocacy is the act of arguing on behalf of a particular issue, idea, person, or an animal. And then an advocate is someone who acts or speaks on behalf of yourself or other person. So that person is known as an advocate. Purpose of advocacy. Advocacy is speaking up for or acting on behalf of yourself or another person. So the other person is often receiving a service from a statutory or voluntary organization. Advocates can help service users to make clear their own views and wishes, express and present their views effectively and faithfully, obtaining independent advice and accurate information, negotiate and resolve of conflict. Some people aren't clear about all their rights as citizens, or have difficulties in fully understanding these rights. So others may find it hard to speak up for themselves, and advocates may help to meet these needs. All right, then the other key purpose is advocates can enable people to take more responsibility and control for the decision which affect their lives. Let's look at key principles. So the key principles are: 1, what the person says and wants is the most important thing. 2, advocacy enables individuals to do more for themselves and lessens their dependence on other people. 3, advocates should help people to make informed choices. An advocate must ensure the service user is making real choices based on good quality information. 4, advocates should not have a conflict of interest so that they can speak up for someone effectively. There must be no other pressures on the advocate. This is why the advocate needs to be independent of the service provider. 5, people must have choice about the type of advocacy they use. Service users should be able to choose the type of advocacy that suit them best. Some service users feel that they need one person who is willing to act on their behalf, whereas we will prefer the support of a group. Others will want to advocate for themselves as far as is possible, with only the minimum of support from the consultant advocator. The choices of advocacy model will vary according to the person's need. Okay, so now let's look at the code of practice for advocates. Why have a code of practice for advocates? So simple reasons are: 1, it sets out an agreed standard of service. 2, it tells people who want to use an advocate what they should be able to expect. 3, it tells other people, so this includes carers, family, and staff. Okay, it tells them who provides the services to the person what an advocate can be expected to do or not to do. Then 4, it can help advocacy groups to explain what they are trying to do and can be used as a training tool. It can also be used to train staff from statutory, voluntary, or business organizations. Then the other reason for having a code of practice for advocates is that it helps advocates to understand their role and responsibility. So, code of practice of advocates. So you're saying an independent advocate will not be a member of staff of the organization providing the service to the service user. Then the role of the advocate is to represent the views and wishes of the service user accurately and effectively. Before agreeing to act as an advocate, that is an advocator, will always check that the role of advocacy is fully understood, and this is what the service user really wants. And it's also important to observe the following code that the advocacy relationship will last for as long as both parties agree, and that an advocate will agree in advance with the service user how contact will be made, how often and in what form it will be made. Other things to consider within the code of practice is that an advocate has a right to raise any issue on behalf of the service user. An advocate does not need to agree with the service user, only to respect their view and express it accurately. An advocate will not take on someone else's responsibility, but they may encourage someone to do their job more effectively. An advocate will always respect the service user's right to privacy and confidentiality. So if an advocate is unsure about what to do because of a conflict of interest, they should contact their advocacy group or manager for support and advice. The service user's interest should not suffer because of pressure placed on an advocate. The other issues also to consider is that advocates will demonstrate respect for equal opportunities in all that they do. The advocate's first loyalty is always to the service user they work with. Advocates must demonstrate that they are there to encourage and help the service user manage their own affairs wherever possible. An advocate must be prepared to undertake appropriate training and accept guidance. So, advocates organizations should have available copies of their code of practice for the public to review. Okay, so now let's look at advocacy models. So there is the self-advocacy model. This is where an individual or group of people speak or act on their own behalf in pursuit of their own needs and interests. So speaking up for yourself is what you're looking at as a self-advocacy model. So speaking up may be difficult because of a disability or illness, or simply because people don't take service users seriously or think they are incapable of making decisions. The other model is the citizen advocacy. This is where someone else speaks up on behalf of the service user or helps them to speak up for themselves. It is based on the idea of a valued citizen. That is, someone who does not have a problem getting heard. Therefore, working with a person who is discriminated against becomes easy for these valued citizens. The relationship may develop into friendship or just working together to develop the service user's skill or confidence to manage their own situation. Citizen advocates usually come from a recognized and coordinated scheme. So the other model is the crisis advocacy model. So this is where an advocate is found to help with a one-off difficult situation or crisis. The advocate may be someone who is already a citizen advocate. Then there is the peer advocacy model. This is where a service user who have experienced similar problems of not being listened to may help others to speak up for themselves. A peer advocate is likely to have a very good understanding of what other service users are going through. Okay, then there is the professional advocacy model. This can mean experts in a professional field such as lawyers being commissioned to speak up on behalf of an individual service user or group. They may or may not receive payment for acting as an advocate. All right, then for the sake of this discussion, the last model that we are going to discuss is the corrective advocacy. So this is where a group of people, sometimes from very different backgrounds, campaign on behalf of themselves or others to try and change things. This could be a national organization or local, or one focusing on either national or local issues. So we have talked about the models of advocacy. So the models of advocacy include self-advocacy, citizen advocacy. Okay, apart from citizen advocacy, we have crisis advocacy, peer advocacy, professional advocacy model, and collective advocacy model. Now, let's look at basic elements of advocacy. The basic elements of advocacy include: 1, selecting an advocacy objective. As you embark on advocacy, it's important that you select an advocacy objective. Then 2, using data and research for advocacy. So as you are embarking on advocacy, it's also important that you have a lot of information at hand. So you have to use data and research for you to conduct. So meaning you have to be very knowledgeable about the topic in which you want to advocate on. You need to know the roles that are guiding that so that your advocacy can be successful. Then 3, identifying advocacy audience. All right, okay, so you need to know the people, as you are advocating, the people that are likely to benefit, so that you enlighten them about their advocacy, so that they can come also to support the cause for which you are advocating for. Then number 4, developing and delivering advocacy messages. So this can be done through use of different medias like posters, radio messages, making announcement. So you need to develop and deliver advocacy messages. This is to create awareness among people. Then building coalitions. Okay, so after you have delivered the message, advocacy message, people are now will form coalitions on how to strategize, coalitions on how to add more pressure, so that what you're advocating for can be heard, and this something is done for about the same. Then number 6, making persuasive presentation. This is key in advocacy, because when you are presenting, you need to have facts, so that as you present, the wrong is pointed at and the necessary changes are made. So you have to make persuasive presentation that have a lot of facts in them, highlighting the inequalities that are there. Then number 7, fundraising for advocacy. As you form coalitions, as you make these persuasive, you may need to have some funds for you to eat as you are advocating, for you to also ensure you motivate the people that are in the front line in advocating. So you need to raise funds so that your messages can also be spread across through media, so that the information is sponsored through media. So you need to fundraise for your advocacy. Then number 8 step of basic elements of advocacy is evaluating advocacy efforts. So after advocating, it's important to evaluate whether your efforts have worked. It's also important to evaluate whether you have to evaluate the weaknesses within your advocacy that you are trying to put across. What were the weaknesses? So you evaluate. Okay, so these are the basic elements in advocacy, and they include: 1, selecting an advocacy objective. This is the first thing. You need to have an objective that you want to achieve. Then after that, gather knowledge. That is 2, using data and research for advocacy. You need to have the information. 3, identifying advocacy audience. The target group for your advocacy needs to be identified. Then 4, you have to develop and deliver the advocacy messages. Then 5, developing coalitions. Okay, forming groups. Okay, as you're advocating, so you have to develop coalitions, people that you can come together with, so that you can deliver the advocacy message. Then making persuasive presentations. So your presentation should have facts, so that the inequality is pointed at. Then 7, fundraising for advocacy. As you're advocating, you may need to use media and other things. So you need to ensure that all your activities are well sponsored, okay, using the fundraising money that has been raised. Then number 8 now is evaluating advocacy efforts. So after all the efforts of advocating, you also need to see whether you have achieved the intended results. So that is it on advocacy, please. And I would urge you to say these things can still be expanded further on advocacy. And we have also recorded another lesson on advocacy, of course, different using a different approach. So we feel these notes should help you understand the core value surrounding advocacy. So thank you very much.